This week on Destination Whitetail, we are full. First, we are filling Grandpa's freezer in North Florida.
Well, this is a true family keepsake. This is his first buck that he ever killed.
You know, I'm trying to come down here on a last-minute deal to try to get him some deer meat and venison for the freezer.
Then we discuss the usefulness of a good pack while in the deer woods.
I've got at least a half a dozen backpacks, various shapes and sizes, that I use for different types of hunts. Having said that, I use the same pack probably 90% of the time. Why? Because of familiarity.
And hear from Brittany about Browning trail cameras.
All right, so scouting before season is important to me, and it's also very exciting. You get to set out cameras, kind of have a plan of where you're going to hunt. If you have a lot of property, it's great because you can put cameras out all over the place and get an idea of what deer are going to be out there, how many, what time of day they're coming, and when they're coming to eat, when they're leaving.
And to round it all out, we discuss kinetic energy and how to pick the right equipment for your next hunt.
You know, kinetic energy is a term that we hear a lot about in archery, and it's really important, but a lot of people don't understand it.
Hey y'all, I'm Brittany Glaze. Welcome to Destination Whitetail.
Look through the scope, take a bead on him, plow! Gotta believe. There's enough wild game meat for all of us.
I started hunting at a pretty young age. I was, I guess, 12 or 13 years old when I first started hunting. Mostly for small game, squirrels, rabbits, things like that. Kind of grew up in this area, caught fish all out of the creek and what have you, but started deer hunting with my grandfather when I was probably about 12 or 13 years old, and that's where my hunting experience began. We had good times fishing and hunting. I remember growing up on this creek.
I come down here about a month ago and took a bowl and some little minnows that I caught out here. Caught a bunch of little catfish about that long. Good.
You eat those little mud cat?
Mud cat, yeah.
My grandfather is kind of the patriarch of our family and had been kind of led us all in hunting. I think he started mostly deer hunting in the probably late 60s, early 70s.
This is a true family keepsake. I remember as a little boy, my grandfather would take me into the bedroom and I would get to pet the deer. And this is his first buck that he ever killed. I think he killed it, there's a tag here, it says killed November 9th, 1971. That was on his birthday.
Yeah, it was in Jasper County, just north of Macon. And we had 400 acres there. And it was I was on a stand this morning that I got him, and hadn't seen a deer. And about 10:30, he come across a dirt road and right over, almost underneath me. And he had crossed over off of our land onto the next hunter's land. And I was a little uneasy to shoot, because I didn't want to shoot on another man's property. But it was my first chance, and the first chance of the deer. So I took the shot, and it was a dead shot.
My grandfather had been a woodsman and a great hunter and great fisherman his whole life. Grew up in Middle Tennessee before he moved to Florida and then to Georgia, and just grew up during the Depression, kind of living off the land. He and his family had a farm in Tennessee.
Things was very rough and very hard. We lived off the land, and we killed varmints, fished, hunted, whatever we could do to get to eat. And the first lesson my daddy taught me was that I never shoot nothing that I don't eat.
One of the things that I still think is probably the most inspirational thing about my grandfather hunting is still for his love of the hunt. 92 years old, he's probably had at least 50 deer seasons, if not more, and he is still just like a school kid, getting up, getting ready to go hunting, just so excited. You know, and so that's really refreshing, and it puts everything into perspective. And for my kids to be able to see that and see how excited he is to get out and go and hunt, they really appreciate that, and it makes it a little bit when your 92-year-old great-grandfather can get up and get out of bed and meet you at the hunting land, then you can't really gripe and complain a whole lot about having to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and go deer hunting. So that's a big deal, and I still enjoy seeing that.
Destination Whitetail is brought to you by Browning Trail Cameras, by Alps Outdoors, exceed your expectations, by Thompson Center, America's master gunmaker, by Nikon, the next generation in hunting optics, by Analogics, protect your herd with the power of science, and by Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable.
I've got at least a half a dozen backpacks, various shapes and sizes, that I use for different types of hunts. Having said that, I use the same pack probably 90% of the time. Why? Because of familiarity. I know every nook and cranny, every pocket, every storage compartment in that backpack intimately. So I know that I can get my equipment quickly and quietly, even in the dark. Now there's two things that I look for in a backpack. The first, it's got to be high quality. It's got to be high quality to withstand the vigors of the hunt. Second, it's got to make sense for the type of hunting I do. It's got to have the right pockets, the right compartments. It's got to be the right size for the hunt I'm on. Your hunt depends on great gear, and having a high quality backpack is no exception. Alps' Extreme line of backpacks focuses on those features that make hunters more effective and organized in the field. These packs, such as this Pursuit X, have been tested, used and abused, modified and retested to bring consumers a pack that's reliable, durable, and practical. And Alps Extreme backpacks have those features that hardcore hunters need, designed to cover all of the bases, whether you're spending a morning in the tree stand or ground blind or trekking cross-country into the wilderness. They're made from durable nylon fabrics and feature molded foam suspension contours and soft-edged shoulder straps for a comfortable fit. And they're great for bow hunters and gun hunters, with a quiver holder using a unique bungee and cord lock design and a drop-down pocket to hold a bow or gun securely. In addition to a variety of pockets and storage areas, there's an organizational front pocket that keeps gear at your fingertips. In the field, a backpack can be your very best friend, but only if you choose a model that's perfect for the type of hunting you're doing. For more information on Alps backpacks, visit their website at alpsoutdoors.com.
I had a great opportunity to come to North Florida to hunt. The guys from Deer Hunting invited me to come down for a late season gun hunt in the northwest part of Florida. Rut's supposed to be going on, but it's a little bit warmer temperature, so you just never know what's going to happen in these kind of weather conditions. But anyway, the purpose of the hunt for me isn't really to try to go kill a big deer. It's really just to kill a deer. This year with my grandfather, his first season that he hasn't killed a deer, and he was, at the end of the season, had some regrets and really wanted to get some deer meat, which he didn't get. So, you know, I'm trying to come down here on a last-minute deal to try to get him some deer meat and venison for the freezer.
All right, so scouting before season is important to me, and it's also very exciting. You get to set out cameras, kind of have a plan of where you're going to hunt. If you have a lot of property, it's great because you can put cameras out all over the place and get an idea of what deer are going to be out there, how many, what time of day they're coming, and when they're coming to eat, when they're leaving. So when you're scouting and putting out cameras, you want to find a good place, especially, you know, where deer are going to be coming in and out. You don't want to just stick it on a tree and expect something to walk by. So here we have a scrape, we have plenty of tracks, there's big pines turning into little pines, there's also a river around, and like I said, we know that the deer are coming in and out here. You can also set it up in front of a feeder if you'd like, so you know that they're coming to it and you know they're going to come and eat. There are many cameras to choose from, but you definitely want to use one that is truly going to help you find deer. Browning trail cameras has so many options in their line. Some of the features that I like is it holds 512 gigabytes, which is about 10,000 pictures. And it's super quiet, it films an HD video. There's so many cameras to choose from, but you really want to choose one that's truly going to help you find the deer. So you kind of want to pay attention to the height when you're putting a camera up. You know, deer are a little shorter than we are, so you want to put it on their level. And we got a food plot out here, and you know they're going to be bending over and eating and things like that. So just kind of pay attention to that whenever you're putting one up. You get cameras now that do time-lapse videos, all kinds of photos, day, night. I mean, you can get them 24/7, and it's super exciting whenever you get your camera pictures and you look them up, you know, look at them at night and see what's growing, watch them grow all summer long, and then opening day, you kind of have an idea of what you're going to be hunting.
The first deer that we saw was a buck. We caught movement. He was actually pretty close to us. There's some really high bush and grasses off to our left, and he got really close to us before we first able to get glasses on him and figure out what he was. And you know, immediately when I could see a little bit of horn, a little bit of tines through the woods. I thought, well, here comes a buck. But we saw him right away and knew that he was a young deer, and we needed to pass him and wait on either a bigger deer or a big doe. It's a little buck. He's a little too small. As he kind of exited, a couple more deer started moving from the same direction that he came from, and there was 2 mature does and 1 small yearling doe. So we just let them come out to the field so we could figure out exactly which deer we wanted to try to take.
I'm gonna try to get one of them, but they're lined up where they're all facing away from me and kind of stacked on each other. So I gotta wait till one of them turns sideways, get me a clean shot.
We saw them for a long time. They just never presented us with a clear shot. Either they were stacked up on top of each other, so if you shot the front deer, you had a really high likelihood if you got a pass-through shot of hitting a deer behind it, or they were facing directly with their rear ends facing to us and just not a good, clean, ethical shot. So there's a little bit of tense moments there, hoping that those deer would just hang out in that food plot and continue to feed, and finally one of them, the lead doe, gave us a good shot.
All right, here we go.
Destination Whitetail is brought to you by Browning Trail Cameras, by Alps Outdoors, exceed your expectations, by Thompson Center, America's master gunmaker, by Nikon, the next generation in hunting optics, by Analogics, protect your herd with the power of science, and by Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable.
You know, kinetic energy is a term that we hear a lot about in archery, and it's really important, but a lot of people don't understand it. So one thing to talk about is, you know, how much energy and what does it mean for me when I'm, you know, out hunting? Well, your bow has a certain amount of energy regardless of how much poundage you shoot and how long you draw like this. There's only a certain amount of potential energy in your bow. And if you think about shooting a bow and just dry firing it, you're not going to translate any of that energy to any arrow, and you're just going to have, it's a dry fire. You're going to hear lots of noise. The opposite is if you took, say, something like a crowbar and shot it out of your bow. It would absorb all the energy out of the bow, but the crowbar would only fly a few feet. So somewhere between those two extremes are the arrows that we shoot. So when I'm thinking about a hunting arrow, I like to think of maybe shooting something a little heavier. What that does is it absorbs more of the potential energy out of that bow. You're going to get a quieter shot, but it's also going to mean more velocity downrange and more kinetic energy when it hits the target. And you need that energy to drive that broadhead through the target. That arrow is absorbing the energy out of your bow and delivering that broadhead to the target. And you want as much penetration, as much energy. And that's really important if you're shooting mechanicals as well, because some of that energy is needed as it opens those blades too. So when I'm talking to people, I say there's a happy medium between really heavy arrows and really light arrows, but you might want to consider something just a little heavier for your next hunt.
He's a little too small.
As he kind of exited, a couple more deer started moving from the same direction that he came from, and there was 2 mature does and 1 small yearling doe. So we just let them come out to the field so we could figure out exactly which deer we wanted to try to take.
I'm gonna try to get one of them, but they're lined up where they're all facing away from me and kind of stacked on each other. So I gotta wait till one of them turns sideways, get me a clean shot.
We saw them for a long time. They just never presented us with a clear shot. Either they were stacked up on top of each other, so if you shot the front deer, you had a really high likelihood if you got a pass-through shot of hitting a deer behind it, or they were facing directly with their rear ends facing to us and just not a good, clean, ethical shot. So there's a little bit of tense moments there, hoping that those deer would just hang out in that food plot and continue to feed, and finally one of them, the lead doe, gave us a good shot.
All right, here we go.
You know, you don't necessarily do a whole lot of fist bumps and things like that after shooting a doe, but I knew what this deer was for, and it was a trophy to me because it was intended to go back to my grandfather. So when I got a good clean shot on the deer, I took it and immediately it humped up and started running off, and it, you know, piled up 30 yards from where we shot it. So I knew we had a good shot, saw the deer fall. So the recovery was nice, clean, easy, kind of that I like. So I was pretty excited about it.
There you go. I'm sorry.
You know, at the end of the evening, you know, our job wasn't done. You know, really the cool part for me was to cut that deer up and bone it out and get ready to bring it back home to my grandfather in Georgia. I know he'll enjoy it, and I'll really enjoy giving it to him.
This is for you, Granddad.